Hello, it's Miguel. Hey, Em. How are you doing, girl? So today is the 1st of November. It is a Thursday. And I went to the gym today. I worked out, so got that done. I did an upper body workout today at the gym. So pleased. I had a really good workout. I made progress on some of my lifts, just a few. And I didn't regress that much, which is good. Oh man, I'm a little warm too. That's odd because it's so late in the year. Now it's November 1st, right? And it's still kind of warm outside. I think today the temperature in Lompoc was about 72 degrees, so perfect, right? That gets me to remember that later on this month, the month of November, daylight savings time ends. When does daylight savings time end? Hey Google, when does daylight savings time end?
Daylight saving time began on Sunday, March 11th, 2018 at 2 a.m. and ends on Sunday, November 4th, 2018 at 2 a.m.
All right, so it ends on November 4th at 2 a.m. And I guess that's this weekend. So that means we're going to be losing even more sunlight. That's right. You think our sunlight loss has been bad up until now? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's flip the script. Really, we're going to be able to enjoy more nighttime, more dark time. How about that? How about that for reframing? Yeah. So, what is it that we can enjoy when it's dark outside? Well, we can study more for school. All right. Good deal. What else? We can watch more videos. We can listen to more music. More music. We'll be staying home more, which means that maybe we can do more online shopping. I don't know. What do you do when it's dark outside? Oh, you know what? Maybe we can do some drawing. I have decided to take a drawing class. I'm pretty close to deciding to taking a drawing class next semester at Allen Hancock College. Yep. We'll see how that goes. I might also take a photography class. I'm not sure. I'm still figuring it out. Thankfully, I've got some time to figure it out before I register for the spring semester next year. That gets me to think that maybe you are already thinking about classes you might be taking next semester at your high school. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure how that high school thing works. But I'm already considering what classes I'm going to be taking next semester. Yeah. So I was thinking maybe we can start today's session by reading from Mary Mackenzie's book, Peaceful Living. Ta-da! Ta-da! All right. So let's see what meditations on peace Mary Mackenzie has for us this November 1st. So the quote is by Shirley MacLaine, and it states, "It all starts with self-reflection. Then you can know and empathize more profoundly with someone else." Boy, that's really a true statement. Really the source for much of my understanding about other people comes from my own self-reflection, through my own efforts at self-growth, through my own internal reflection about my own mental processes. And because I've done the work to sort of figure out what's going on in my own mind, I am able to spend time in other people's minds, you know, reflecting on what they've said and how they've said it, and, sort of asking myself, well, where are they coming from? What values are important to them? What has meaning in their lives? And I can ask those questions because I ask those questions of myself. So, it really is true that, the more introspective you are, the more I think you're able to empathize with other people. And I think this is true also when it comes to sort of recognizing, appreciating, and thinking thoughtfully about emotions. If you want to build emotional intelligence that's worth having, it's important to focus on your own emotions and understand what's going on there and what produces them, what makes them more or less intense. Also developing a vocabulary of your emotional responses. That's also quite helpful. Really just knowing the words. Part of emotional language or part of emotional intelligence is just having the emotional language to talk about your emotions. It's about being able to identify what's going on in your mind when you're having an emotion. Whether you are in a high mood or a low mood, it's helpful to have a lot of words, a lot of descriptors at your disposal that you can use to sort of identify concretes, right? The concretes of your lived experience. So, if you happen to have any dictionaries that relate to psychology, it's great. Or philosophy, it's important to take them out and consider them. Learn what they mean so that you'll have some means of conveying what you are understanding about the other. Okay. So let's move on to Mary Mackenzie's passage. It is subtitled Clarifying Our Needs. We often find ourselves slipping into old behaviors that we would rather change. This is because we don't have a new plan for responding to the same old situations. Let's say you work with someone who talks much more than you enjoy. You might try to listen to him politely for the first half hour, but your irritation mounts, and you say something curt to him. Bob, I need to get back to work. You regret this every time you do it, but you can't seem to get yourself to respond differently. Rather than berate yourself or judge Bob as an incessant talker, take a moment to consider your unmet needs. They could be time, interest, or even consideration. What would it take for you to meet those needs? Would you feel better if the conversation lasted a shorter time, or if you were more prepared for a long dialogue? Once you connect to your unmet needs and have a few ideas of what it would take to meet them, make a request of the other person. Bob, I'm feeling a little worried that this conversation may last longer than I'm comfortable with. I'm working on a deadline, and I'd like to get back to it. Would it be okay with you if we set an appointment to continue this conversation when I'm not under too much time pressure? If you found that you continue to behave in ways that don't work for you, examine your unmet needs in those kind of situations and consider other methods for meeting them. And the thought for the day is, notice whether you are slipping into old behaviors today. Connect to your unmet needs and then identify a new strategy for the situation. So, well, I recognize that I do that on occasion. That is, I will fall into this well-worn behavior that I know is ineffective. And somehow many times, I don't know how to change my own behavior. To sort of, I just haven't thought of a strategy that would be more workable. Sometimes I fall into these old behaviors and habits because of pure thoughtlessness. I just haven't taken the time to figure out a solution. And maybe if in the case that I have taken the time, then maybe I just haven't figured out a way to cue myself so that when it happens, I implement the new strategy. Sometimes I'm just not brave enough or courageous enough to implement the new strategy. The path of the old behavior is so well worn that I'm basically trapped. It's true, we have a choice. Yeah, we make choices every moment of every day. Though going with the same old plan that I've always been using, that results in a known quantity. There's something known about that. And that is very comforting. If I stay silent and wait to the end, then, I'll know how I'll feel. I'll know how they will feel at the end of it because it's happened many, many times. But when I decide to do something different, even if I think it's a better strategy, I'm still risking change, right? There's uncertainty about the outcome, whether it will work or not, whether the other person will be annoyed, whether I will get what I want. It's sort of unknown. And I think maybe for that reason alone could be very fear-inspiring. As a human being, it's really tough to change. It's easy to do the same thing, even if the same thing is harmful or not optimal. That's something that humans need too. We have a need for certainty, right? I've talked in the past about how life around us is so uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive within the next hour. That uncertainty creates a feeling of concern and fear in me. And I crave knowing what the answers are, right? I crave knowing what the future holds. And, if I've done the same thing again and again, I have a better idea, maybe not a perfect idea, a more certain idea of what will happen, even if that outcome represents a loss. It's a fixed and known loss, right? Sometimes ideas, for continual improvement do sort of have an outcome that is an improvement on the old outcome. Sometimes, though, it's worse, right? Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you've got to go to plan B or plan C or plan D. It's just part of the uncertainty of life. So, yeah. I like the idea, though, in general. It's important to come up with strategies that meet your needs. And, it's also helpful to think about exercising your virtues, your strengths related to assertiveness, right? Equal treatment. When you give someone, say, the floor to speak, you hope that in equal measure, you will receive the floor to speak, right? There's this unstated agreement of fairness and equality. And if someone talks a lot and that agreement is violated, right, then what do you do next? Right? Things seem unequal and they may seem unfair. And that may trigger anger, right? Or sadness. Yeah. So we do the best we can, and we try to assert ourselves. And by assertiveness, I mean equal treatment. Making a stand for equal treatment. That is negotiating with the other party ways to have more equality and fairness in your relationship. I know that that's a value that I try to seek and fulfill in my relationships. I value fairness. I value equality. And what's interesting about equality is that it's pretty easy to sense. It's easy to sense when things are unequal. Like, I know I can sense when there's a power imbalance. Maybe someone has more influence than I do, or less. And equality, when two people in a relationship are on equal footing, it's known. Basically, I have this kind of relationship with a lot of my friends, pretty much every one of my friends, where we are equals. Now, we may be unequal in many ways. For example, one friend might have a strength in their personality or a skill set in one direction, and I may have a weakness in that very same skill set. So, it sort of depends on context about when you'll use the equality card. Sometimes it's just not feasible to be equal in everything with all friends of yours. There's got to be some imbalances. Though I think there's probably a range of reasonable imbalance. And then outside of that range, well, then it makes sense to make a call for greater equality through some kind of assertive statement. Again, that takes courage. I know. No one said relationships are easy. In fact, just the opposite. So, anyway. So that was really nice. I like this statement of Mary McKenzie and how she's focusing on clarifying our needs. So, you may recall that last time I was here, we were reading a little bit from this book called Hark, A Christmas Sampler by Jane Yolen. And the reason I pulled it out of the library was because I really enjoy Christmas. Christmas is one of my favorite holidays. And I wanted to learn about it a little bit more. I wanted to meditate on Christmas. I wanted to think about it. Christmas is just about 2 months away, about 60 days away. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to be doing anything for Christmas, except perhaps taking vacation time. But beyond that, I always find it fascinating to learn more about the things I enjoy, like holidays, right? And I enjoy the celebrations. And I actually had 2 questions when I left last, thinking about Christmas. And that was, what is the origin story of the Yule log? And what is the origin story of mistletoe? And ta-da! Right here in this book, they discuss it in the subject called Christmas plants. So let's read about Christmas plants. That's such a great way to say it. I want to know about Christmas plants, please. So let's begin. So it starts with the Yule log. The Yule log. Once upon a time, in the cold northern countries of Sweden and Norway, the Norse people believed in Yggdrasil, the world tree. It was said that Yggdrasil had one root in heaven and one root in hell, and one root on earth. When the Norse became Christians, they burned a log each Christmas to remind themselves that the world tree had been burnt away, and with it, all of their old beliefs. What? Oh, how tragic. The custom of burning a special log at Christmas spread all across Europe and into England as well. Days before Christmas, families would go into the woods to cut down a large tree. Then, with much singing and laughter, they dragged the great log home on Christmas Eve. Sometimes the log was so big, it took a team of horses to haul it. Strange customs grew up around the Yule log. For example, some people believed it was unlucky to let the log be burned up completely, so they always saved a little piece for starting the next year's fire. That's interesting. In France, ashes from the burned log were thought to help heal chilblains. I don't know what a chilblain is. In the Balkans, the ashes were set in the cleft of fruit trees to help bring about a good crop. In Germany, whenever thunder rattled overhead, a piece of the log was put back into the fireplace to help protect the house from lightning. So here is the origin story for mistletoe. Long before there was a Christmas, mistletoe was part of winter solstice celebrations. The Druid priests who lived in ancient Britain thought mistletoe a sacred plant because it did not grow with its roots in the ground. Instead, because it is a parasite, it winds about a tree and roots there. On December 22nd each year, the Druid's high priest climbed a tall oak and with a golden sickle cut down the mistletoe. Underneath the tree, the worshippers caught the pieces with the skirts of their robes. They considered it terribly unlucky to let even the smallest piece touch the ground. The Norse too believed that mistletoe was sacred. Their goddess of love, Frigga, had a son, Balder, who had been killed by an arrow made of mistletoe. When she cried at his birth, her tears fell on the mistletoe and turned into white berries. Frigga promised her people that never again would the mistletoe cause harm. She vowed that anyone standing under the mistletoe would get a kiss. Because of that belief, the Norse ruled that enemies meeting under mistletoe, even by accident, had to put up their weapons and declare a truce for the day. Today, our Christmas celebrations mirror some of those old pagan customs. Many people still consider it unlucky to drop mistletoe to the ground. And if you stand under mistletoe at Christmas time, you might be kissed. Wow, I had no idea about either of these. What an interesting meaning of the Yule log. When the Norse became Christians, they burned a log each Christmas to remind themselves that the world tree had been burned away, and with it, all of their old beliefs. I wonder what the story is behind the Norwegians, or the Norse, I should say, converting to Christianity. It's kind of funny. Even today, people burn stuff like memorabilia that's old and out of date, like love letters and things like that, in order to, as a metaphor of their split from the past. So we do it today with more than just a Yule log. We do it with like old photographs and old poetry and all kinds of things. That's kind of neat. I did not know that thing about Balder and Frigga and how Balder was killed by an arrow made of mistletoe. What's kind of interesting is when I was a kid, I collected Thor comic books. And Balder was a key character in the Thor comic series, along with Loki, his brother. And in fact, there was a miniseries of comics that centered around Balder himself called Balder the Brave. And that series of comic books was one of my favorite. Definitely one of my favorite comic books. And even though I focused a lot on Balder in the Marvel universe, I don't seem to recall that he was killed with mistletoe. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to this autumn when we'll have Thanksgiving and Christmas time. I'm looking forward to taking some vacation and visiting with family and friends. And because Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, and one of the things I like the most about Thanksgiving is that I love the decorations and I love the food, right? Certainly I love the family and the friends, but really the food, I especially love that. I love pumpkin pie and I love eggnog, and I love a lot of the cinnamon sticks. I guess that's more of a Christmas tradition, but I love potatoes and gravy. Potatoes is one of my favorite dishes. I just love potatoes. I love russet potatoes, white potatoes, red potatoes, and I also like sweet potatoes. I'm a big sweet potato fan. In fact, recently I made an amazing discovery. I have been using my oven lately in order to do a lot more cooking. I roast vegetables in my oven. I might have mentioned it. But I've been making baked potatoes lately, and it's been such a success. Basically, I throw a lot of potatoes on a cookie sheet, and the cookie sheet, my particular cookie sheet, has a silicone mat on top to prevent any of the food from sticking onto the pan. And so I'm able to stuff a lot of potatoes on this cookie sheet and bake it for an hour. And then I take those potatoes, let them cool off a little bit, and then stick them in the fridge. And then I've just got all of this food lying around in my fridge that I really enjoy. A potato is such a versatile food. You can mash it. That is a cooked potato. You can mash it. You can put barbecue sauce on it. You can put ketchup or mustard on it. It's just so good. And so I'm really loving doing that. I'm also really loving doing that with sweet potatoes, right? Sweet potatoes are fantastic because you get a lot of vitamin A in it. You get like 500% the RDA of vitamin A in a sweet potato. So, it's really wonderful. The nutrition and the ease of putting together a meal is just unmatched when it comes to roasting potatoes. So, and of course, roasting potatoes is a Thanksgiving tradition, right? Potatoes are a Thanksgiving traditional food. So, I'm really glad that I learned how to do that. In fact, look at this. I picked this up from the grocery store today. This is maize, but it's also, and maize is just a word that means corn. And I'm just marveling at this is a decoration for the home, and it is actual corn, dried corn. And look at these kernels. Look how they're different colors. Some are red and yellow, and others more pale. And I just find it really beautiful. And I'm really pleased to put these on display near my kitchen and show the world, this beautiful genetic fabulousness that Mother Nature has gifted us. So anyway, I'm having a good time. So now let's go and answer a few questions on the Kindle. Why don't we? So let me get that started. Okay, let's start that Kindle. So here we go. I've got it going. And let's start off with the first question. Question number 190. Do you prefer digital books or print? It's kind of interesting how these questions are sort of black and white. I prefer either one or the other. Well, that's not the way life is, right? I talk about a multi-theoretical perspective, and this is true when it comes to print and electronic books. There's some books that I am fine with reading in electronic ebook format. Other books that would be unworkable. It depends on the book. It depends on the subject matter. Like, for example, a fiction book, like I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm still reading it. That book is a fiction book, and very easily could I just pick it up as an ebook and read through it. Chances are it doesn't have any pictures, right? It doesn't have any unique content. And so it makes sense to have it in ebook format. It's also a rather thick physical book, right? The copies of Harry Potter that I've seen can be many inches thick, and that's just a hassle to carry around all the time. So an ebook makes sense in that particular circumstance. Now, others like textbooks, there are ebooks of my textbooks that I have for class, but I almost never consider them because, who wants to continually look at a digital screen when you're studying for a class, studying for an exam? And plus, there are also so many photographs and pictures, and screens are only yay big on laptops. Even laptops with large screens, they can only put so much on that digital screen. And often it's just not good enough to convey the information that the writer wants to convey in a textbook. So pretty much all my textbooks are paper, and I like it that way. So, it depends. Now, I'm reading a lot more ebooks lately than paper because of its sheer convenience. One thing I really like about ebooks too is that I can buy a newspaper without going to a store, right? I can just download it using 3G technology and Wi-Fi. And that's very convenient. I don't have to leave my home to get the New York Times, say, or the Washington Post. Because that's kind of a hassle. That's always been the hassle with newspapers, right? There's also another hassle with newspapers. The ink kind of comes off the page sometimes. And so you can get on your clothes, and it can get on your carpet, and it can get on your fabrics like your bedspread and on your couch fabric. Yeah, newspaper ink can smudge, and that's not so great. Other benefits of using ebooks is, well, recycling, right? Wood pulp, which makes newspaper paper. What do you do with the paper after you've finished reading it? I used to throw it away in the trash or recycle it, and it's kind of a problem. I remember one time I would take stacks of old newspapers to the recycle bins on V Street here in Lompoc, and I don't know, it just turned into this chore that I would do like once a week. I'd have to go to the recycling after 7 newspapers or so, or 14 newspapers. That's quite a stack. And deal with them. Otherwise, those papers would take up valuable space, right? So yeah, I really like having a Kindle where you can just download the electronic version, and when you're done with it, you're done with it. You don't really have to do anything, right? You don't even have to delete the newspaper. You can keep it for a long time. Anyway, so for now, I actually like reading newspapers in ebook format. That's not to say I don't like reading print newspapers, because I do. I like when I see a print newspaper, to me it's got this extra value. It's easy to thumb through, right? Page to page. And I appreciate that. Whereas, say, an ebook, it's not as easy to thumb through information. The nice thing, though, about newspapers is that the photographs are often quite clear and instructive and colorful, whereas in an ebook format, ebooks generally, to my knowledge, some of them have color, but the one like the Amazon Kindle that I use does not have color yet. So, it also does not manage images very well. So there's a trade-off, right? Newspapers are great to read as ebooks, but there are limitations, right? Formatting is a limitation, and pictures are a limitation. Yeah. So it depends. My answer is it depends when it comes to what is my favorite digital books or print. Okay, next question. Question 191. Are you left-handed? Yeah, I'm left-handed. This is my writing hand, and I've written with my left hand throughout my entire life. Now, why did I choose my left hand instead of my right, say in kindergarten when I started to write? I don't know. It just made sense to me, and I've been left-handed ever since. Now, it's kind of funny. I don't know if you know this, but I'm like a right-handed when it comes to baseball, but I'm left-handed when it comes to throwing a baseball. That is, I'm right-handed when it comes to hitting a bat, using a bat, left-handed when it comes to throwing a ball. I'm also left-handed when it comes to golf, and left-handed when it comes to playing a guitar. But I'm like right-handed when it comes to so many other things, like playing the trumpet, or it's kind of funny. You bounce back and forth. Sometimes your dominant hand isn't what you expect it to be. For example, I think I'm a right-handed when I use the bow and arrow. I don't know why that would be. So, it's kind of funny. Or maybe I'm left-handed when I use the bow and arrow. I'm not sure. I'm left-handed when I fish. It's kind of funny how it can swap. Left and right-handedness can swap when you do different activities. But when it comes to writing, I'm left-handed. Question number 192. Do you have a phobia? This is a good question. Do I have a phobia? Well, these days, I'm rather fear-free, thankfully. And that fear-free state has come from basically a lot of inner work and exercise and time. I used to have a health phobia, health anxiety, a long time ago. Like 7 years ago or longer. Yeah, all you have to do is ask your mom about it. And she'll know what you're talking about. But I don't have that anymore. In fact, I do things today that I wouldn't have even done years ago in terms of risk-taking, in a minor risk-taking relating to health. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I don't think I have any phobias right now. For example, I'm not necessarily scared of spiders at all. I don't really have a fear of heights. I get a little queasy sometimes when I'm at heights, but it's really never a problem. I can fly on airplanes, no problem. There's no agoraphobia at all. I love being around groups of people. So, no, I really don't have any kind of phobia right now. Let's see, what's the next question? Let's say if I had any kind of phobia, it would be snakes. Now, I just don't care for snakes. I can walk up to a snake and be around snakes and have snakes on my body, and that's okay. And I've held boa constrictors around my neck, and I've also, when I was a kid, I used to catch garter snakes just like every other kid, and I'd catch salamanders too and other reptiles, and toads, right, amphibians. So, and I would still be able to do all that stuff. It's not a phobia. I just don't care to be around snakes. It's not a phobia. I mean, if I had to catch a snake or hold a snake or touch a snake, I wouldn't be bothered by it. But I just don't prefer to be around snakes. Just and I don't mind going to the reptile museum, the museum and the reptile section. That's perfectly okay. And I could even interact with snakes if they're willing to interact, and be around snakes. So it's not a phobia. It's just, I don't know. I think of snakes as being sort of uncertain in a way. It's like, if I could, I would be willing to spend less time around snakes if I had the choice. But a funny thing is, I don't think I've got any kind of phobia, and I think I'm just as afraid or even less afraid of snakes than most people. I just don't have any care for them being around. I wonder if that makes any sense. All right, next question. Question number 193. Is there an animal or insect that scares you? Well, I just mentioned snakes. Snakes don't scare me. On a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is like total fear inspiring and 1 is like, or 0 is no fear. I'm like a 2 or 3. I don't care for having snakes around. Now, that's the only animal that I'm sort of that way about. Like, I'm fine with bees. Bees can rest on my forehead or on my shoulders. I don't care about bees. Ants. Hey, ants can crawl on me all day long. I just don't care when they bite me. I don't particularly like to be around snakes, but I can handle them and be around them and touch them and stuff. What other things are people afraid of? Spiders. I have zero concern about spiders. Although when I see a black widow spider, I'm like, okay, that's a black widow spider. Or a brown recluse. I tend to think, okay, that's what I think that is, so what do I do with it now? And I don't know, I don't do much about them. Let's see, are there any things that really scare me? No, there are no insects that scare me. There's some insects that are unpleasant. Like, I don't like ticks. And it's not like I'm cautious around ticks because, I know that they spread, Lyme disease. And so I would take extra measures if I knew I was sort of walking around tick country. But they would be intelligent measures. I wouldn't have any phobia about them. I would just wear long pants, right? So no, I don't have any, there's no animal or insect that scares me. I'm fine with, here's the thing too. It seems like a lot of people in our area are afraid of mountain lions. I have no fear of mountain lions. There's so many people who are afraid of them. And even bears. Like, I'm not particularly afraid of bears. Now, I will consciously stay clear of them because they are wild animals. But bears are not of great interest to me. I don't fall asleep, so stay awake and not fall asleep considering bears or something like that. So no. So the answer is basically no. There are no animals that I'm afraid of, really. And I don't have any phobias. Isn't that amazing? It's great. Question number 194. How many languages do you speak? Well, that's an easy one. Just English. Question number 195. What other language would you like to learn? Well, I would kind of like to learn any one. If I had any kind of insight into any other language, that would be totally cool. Like Spanish or French or German or Italian. That'd be so cool. But for me, it's kind of interesting. I don't have this really serious drive. Like sometimes I'll buy a book hoping to learn some more Spanish words or a tape series or something like that. And then pretty much 100% of the time, I just lose interest after about a week. It's a challenge. And if I'm not properly motivated, I'm not going to be learning a language. Now, I hope one of these days I will eventually learn a language, but here's the thing. A lot of people already know English. And for me, the question is there anybody who I can want to speak to who only speaks that language? The target language, say. And there's no one really that I want to speak to that I can only communicate with using a language other than English. So I'm not really highly motivated. I think if I were to learn a second language, it would first probably be Spanish. And there's a lot of Spanish community where I live, and theoretically I could strike up conversations with people who know Spanish and learn Spanish that way. But it's just not that important to me for some reason. I'd rather do other things. Yeah. All right. Next question. Question number 196. Are you afraid of the dark? And no, I'm not afraid of the dark. I have no concerns. I could be in a forest and walk around it and just not be afraid. In the mornings, I could be walking around town early mornings when it's dark. No concern at all. I've got reasonable concern when people are around me, right, that I don't know in the dark. But beyond that, I'm just not afraid. So, how lucky am I? I mean, golly. I'm not even afraid of the dark. Question number 197. What is your biggest fear in life? Gosh, what is my biggest fear in life? Well, I think it might be just having my life prematurely cut short in an accident, like a car accident or getting cancer or something like that. That would be my biggest fear. I don't think it rises to the level of fear. It's more just of a concern, a wariness, right? Yeah. It's something I consider and contemplate how I can reduce the risk of living every day, of basically dying, right? But I don't know. That's my greatest fear. And it's not something I contemplate all the time. I contemplate it only sporadically. And that's my biggest fear, so that's pretty awesome. I have another fear, and that is, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but it's true. It's long-term and continual separation from you, Emily. That's also a concern of mine. Now, it's not one that inspires great fear. I know that you're happy and healthy and strong and you're doing well physically and emotionally, and that satisfies me. I'm highly satisfied by that. But I do have a fear that is a prolonged, unnecessary separation would just create unnecessary loss and needless loss, senseless loss, and that it's not a fear as much as it is a concern, and a concern that I'm willing to take action about. You know? So that's the second one. All right. What's another question? Question number 198. Did you ever enjoy clowns? I did. There was a time in my life when I enjoyed clowns. And it was when I was a young boy. I would watch Bozo the Clown on television. It was on like the children's channel or something like that. Nickelodeon or something. And I enjoyed watching Bozo the Clown. Now, I remember Bozo the Clown. He was definitely a man dressed up in a clown's suit. I had no illusions about what a clown was and who a clown was. In fact, Bozo the Clown, I think, sort of stood out as definitely a man in a clown suit. And he had the general foibles that any man might have had, any middle-aged man might have had, in the way that he spoke to children and how he performed games and things like that. There was not a lot of magic. There's not a lot of magic to this clown idea. It's just, literally a guy, I would always sort of imagine him, he's basically just a man in whiteface and funny clothes. I knew this even as a 6-year-old. I mean, there wasn't anything special about a clown. It was just something like more of a novelty. It was a novelty, right? And in that respect, I enjoyed him. I enjoyed the clown for what the clown represented, sort of the novelty of a different person who is sort of focused on happiness as it relates to children somehow, and game playing. And that's what I knew about clowns. Now, as I grew older, I started thinking less and less and less about clowns until my clown awareness arose after, I don't know, it was probably in the 90s and the 2000s. My clown awareness arose just like everyone else's, when these scary clowns started coming onto the scene in Hollywood and basically ruined it for all the clowns. Right? The scary clowns just became a meme, right? They became this Hollywood standard idea that clowns could be scary. And that did it for me, and it did it for everyone, right? Once that meme got traction, clowns became only scary because they were just not funny enough to be funny. They were just scary now, and that's what we have now. Clowns these days are pretty much 100% scary. And, for that reason, I think just that reason alone, even I, a person who hasn't done much of any thinking about clowns, look askance at clowns and people in clown makeup. Not that they're bad or anything, it's just they're even less interesting than they were back when I was 6 years old. So less interesting that to almost be completely unnecessary. I prefer people dress up as fantasy people like fairies or elves or gnomes or dwarves or Santa Claus or something. Anything other than a clown. They can dress up as anything, like animals or the weather or superheroes. Just no clowns, please. I've been fully indoctrinated by our society and culture into believing or thinking suspiciously about clowns. It's something that I just didn't happen to me consciously. Oh, look at this. Okay. I just saw another way to hold my Kindle. All right, so here's the next question. Question number 199. Do you listen to classical music? And the answer, I am proud to say, is yes. I do listen to classical music. I have listened to it lately for enjoyment. Partly because I have recently, like I mentioned, read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I've been listening to the theme music to that movie. And that theme music is basically all classical. And so I've been listening to a lot of classical music because I've been listening to the Harry Potter theme music. And I've really been enjoying it. It's mystical and magical and whimsical. So yeah, I'm enjoying the Harry Potter classical music. You know, its themes are very sort of creative and fantastic, and I like it. So yes, I listen to classical music all the time, lately anyway. Next question. What is your favorite decade? Well, my favorite decade is the decade that I'm living in right now. But if I had to really choose, I guess it would have to be like the 60s. I think that was my favorite decade when it came to things like philosophy and costume. Yeah, I like that hippie movement. I love their dress and their philosophies. I don't have the same love for the 70s or the 80s. I maybe a little bit for the 80s. I grew up as a kid in the 80s, so I know a lot about the dress and the trends that were happening, the toys and the food, and the design choices that people were making during the 1980s. The 1990s, you know, those were a period. That was a period where success and profit were really extolled. I'm not a big 1990s fan. Not a big 2000s fan. 2010s, I'm not even sure I'm able to conceptualize what happened during the 2010s. And you know, we're in the 2010s right now, so you know, who knows what that'll turn out like. Of course, I like the decade I'm in now because I'm living in it, right? And so that has interest to me. So what's my next question? Question number 201. Do you have a favorite foreign dish? Well, yeah. Well, I said earlier that my favorite food was probably lasagna and maybe pizza. And then I talked about burritos and tacos. So yeah, those are my favorite foreign dishes. Now, do I have any favorite American dishes? Oh yeah, sure. I love hamburgers. I love what's an American dish that I really like? I like hot dogs. I like apple pie. I like pies in general. I like cakes, certainly. Any American, really American foods that I like? Well, I like nachos. I I don't know. Are nachos American or are they Mexican fare? I don't know. I like popcorn. So, but the question is, what is my favorite foreign dish? I would guess it would probably be pizza. Pizza is the what's coming up for me right now. And then I want to say something like spaghetti, but I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of spaghetti. I like French fries though. Okay, so what's the next question? Question number 202. A favorite foreign country? Well, I like the Scandinavian countries, and I like Germany and England, and I like Spain and Panama and Australia. What else do I like? I like Iceland for some reason, and Sweden. Although I mentioned the Scandinavian countries already. Those are my favorite countries. And you know, I actually haven't visited a lot of them, and I only know what I know mostly through television and movies, and the reading that I've done. Next question. Question number 203. Well, I see, Em, that my recording is complete, and I just wanted to take some time out and say that I loved you, and that I love you, and then I I cherish you, and I cherish our time together, and I look forward to spending more time together with you, and being more connected with you, and just enjoying your presence in my life. Peace and out.